Hello, everyone. My name is Yana and I am a Google logistician. I specialize in delivering the target audience to businesses with the necessary parameters. We help scale your online sales using smart, intelligent strategies along with AI tools. For Google advertising campaigns, and in today's video, I think I will make it for those people who want to understand the nuances and differences between these smart, intelligent strategies in a single campaign, which is currently the most advanced advertising tool that Google can offer us. Performance mask. This response will be mostly based on the questions asked, either by specialists during consultations or by businesses that like to independently adjust things, figure out dependencies, in other words, people who like to detail and understand all aspects of what is happening here. Why this question? Very often, for example, people ask why, after switching from maximum conversions to profitability, my quality of life drops. Or conversely, there are situations where profitability drops so much that I switch to maximum conversions and the results completely disappear. Now we will look at what the differences are between them and what the nuances are. And look, everything I will be talking about will be based on my own observations and my own experience. Your experience may differ, and you can share it directly in the comments so that people can also get acquainted with an alternative point of view. I will be drawing and talking about what I have seen. These are my own observations, meaning they are my individual insights. That's why it may not 100% match reality, because I don't write this advertising tool. I don't know what algorithms are in there. Plus there's AI involved, as you know, AI that constantly needs to be given the opportunity to learn, so it can even create completely different things that the developers who embedded the algorithms might not even anticipate. So today we will figure out the difference, why there are always few sales on maximum conversions, more on profitability, how to make more possible sales from profitability without losing in profitability in terms of return on investment, and in which situations maximum conversions might be suitable for you. Let's dive into all of this. I will. Why only these strategies for? Because we will be looking at the performance mix of it and only 2 strategy options. So I'll start with maximum conversions. Let's imagine that this y-axis here represents our revenue in dollars, which I have labeled, and the x-axis represents quantity, units, number. And this black line, the one that runs through the entire graph, is conditionally what the whole business strives for: to grow very quickly, steadily in revenue, in units and other aspects. I will also show this chart. Sorry for the rough lines, they won't be very elegant or beautiful. I'm using a free drawing tool. It's easier for me that way. But I think nothing will break there. If someone appears here who wants to write more beautifully, write to me in the comments, and we will visually format it nicely in a PDF. Look, here is this straight line. This is what we are striving for, to increase units while also increasing purchases. I have also divided this chart into 4 quadrants conditionally. Why 4 squares, if we follow this logic? What can we have here? Here we can have a certain number of sales. I'll mark it as $1 to determine the volume, and so some quantity of items. Because if we place a point somewhere here, for example, if we put a point here, or here, we see that we haven't really moved anywhere, right? We have little of both, right? Maybe we are even on this line. This is how maximum conversions work, and what makes it different from profitability, because it tries to move only along proven paths and the proven ways for most. For example, online businesses are either how previous conversions were achieved, so it's important what kind of conversions you are putting into your advertising account, what types of conversions, why calls or non-calls should not be added, in which situations, in other specific cases, so that you don't mess up something irrelevant, why these should be Google conversions, but this is the main thing. I won't pay for it. Either how these conversions were achieved. Or if we focus on purchases for online stores, it is a simple primitive model on which machine learning is built. This includes viewing the product card, adding to the cart, and making a purchase. And this maximum conversion, it usually operates only within this line, right? Here it is, within this line. I will mark these short points. It can follow this graph, but not deviate too much. So conditionally, most likely, our point will not even be here. Right? Not even here. And our point will be somewhere around here in this quadrant. Although, for example, one random sale might be here. but still, we haven't achieved much. Let's say we have a lot of money. Let's draw $2. Right, we are in this high area, but we sold very few units. In this quadrant, we have both little money, and few are sales, dollars and quantity directly. If we look here, we have everything. Here we have dollars. It will be poorly drawn, so I will mark them as $3 to show that it is like expensive. Here we will have some awesome things, right? Meaning we are doing everything to the maximum. So if a sale happens here in this quadrant, and here, of course, there aren't that many dollars, but there can be a lot of items. The difference between maximum conversions and profitability lies in how it moves along this graph. Of course, depending on your check, this is very important. Maximum conversions cannot just waste a lot of these conversions at a high level. For example, from the conversion of an order purchase to, say, new ones, sometimes above a certain threshold, in different niches, this threshold can vary. For pools, it can be one significantly higher price. For something like kitchenware, it can be generally up to how much? Up to 1,500, up to 2,000, for example, conditionally add 10 euros. It can still work effectively, but beyond that, it may not be able to move. So if we can roughly estimate, let me take the purple color for this conversion. Depending on your niche, the check you're launching, and how you started this strategy, this maximum conversion strategy is very sensitive to the budget ratio and the cost per conversion. This means it is an ideal strategy for launching and starting, but for scaling, it is often very challenging. For example, if you find a case on YouTube about some home goods, something like that case, where there were many, up to 200 or 300 sales per day. By the way, a test was conducted separately on conversions and profitability. On profitability, this thing takes off, but on conversions, it moves very slowly. Well, it does provide a certain cost per conversion, but that's a completely different matter. So if we launch our maximum conversions, a certain niche, a certain price, and we have a bunch of niches, this is a separate story in auto parts, a separate story in flower sales, I don't know, coffee, tables, furniture, cabinets, whatever you want, mopeds, and so on. There are all different niches, and there are different bids up to this limit. It will usually be, we take the average for the hospital. I'm not saying this is directly your situation, but in most cases, for example, if you look at my Telegram chat, people in this personal chat often write messages like, I launched on maximum conversion, my conversion is great, I'm growing there. But at the same time, the price is quite low, so it works out pretty well. So let's say the check is up to 200 hryvnias. Now, if we take this example, how does maximum conversion work? Here are the vines, so to speak. Let me take some ellipses. Have you ever seen a scatter plot? You know, when there are a lot of dots here, right? There are many of them, a lot of dots here, right? I will draw them not very nicely, but you will understand the understanding. Here somewhere they are, here they are, where, correct, here, here. Maybe somewhere here too, depending on the price you set there, but there will be significantly fewer of them. So conditionally, and it will try to move depending on how you manage the budget, whether you manage to increase it and the size of this budget increase. All of this will move along the scatter plots. These points represent, for example, sales volumes, customers who were found, and so on. In general, she very often, for example, on a check of up to 500 hryvnias, which is, for example, euros, for example, up to 15 to 20 euros approximately. Or let it be in dollars, depending on our exchange rate in Ukraine, she will approximately try to stay within this range. This will be her part directly, where she will drive these sales. Yes. There will be sales somewhere around here, maybe somewhere here. Even here they will be. And here they will be, because you can't say that the automation and AI that is working operates strictly according to a linear path. This will work, for example, in search or in the GDN, this story has gained conversion clearly along this line. After all, there's AI, it knows how to use audience targeting and go beyond the limits. This is exactly these volumes. Beyond this, for example, the cases we are considering are home goods, various kitchen items, bathroom items, and so on. It could be tools, but their price, for example, is up to $20, up to $30 maximum. I estimate that depending on the niche, there might be more expensive ones, and there will be conversions. And we are only considering purchases here. It will mostly be concentrated here. Yes, it will jump into different segments, but the sales volumes will be lower. That's it. What is the difference with profitability? This profitability depends on the budget size. And here more factors come into play, such as the budget size, your previous analytics, which products were purchased, the price according to the product position, and your planned profitability value. The profitability value you set in the settings I will refer to as the plan. Here, it's a combination of several factors, meaning it doesn't matter whether you only left 500 hryvnias worth of goods or added, for example, 50,000 hryvnias. It will still conditionally use this for analyzing and modeling some behavior in advertising, also considering your pricing. So she will notice all of this very drastically. Therefore, it is not recommended to set a static value for a purchase, like 300 hryvnias, for example, or $10. But it is recommended to do it dynamically so that the system can see what results it brings, what adjustments or discounts were made, why, for example, a product costs $30 and the revenue is, for example, another 15. It analyzes all of this. So this comrade is already about profitability. For example, we are considering the maximum value strategy. This guy, let's say, adds up all these purple circles that we drew. There will be significantly more of these points here, but there will be many times more. There will be a lot more. Its accuracy in hitting the target is very high. See, I have already drawn it. At the same time, this fellow can capture very large parts of different charts. What these will be depends on your, this is already an advanced AI that can delve into different aspects of this quadrant. If it has something to learn from. If it has a base to learn from, it understands what is happening with the products. For example, there are many cases where someone tries to hack the system with additional figures or something like that. It might not work. Or, for instance, somewhere it performs very poorly, but elsewhere it performs excellently. It looks like this. Moreover, it can get in here, and cook here. It can enter different quadrants. That's its difference. The system's ability to squeeze out a certain return for you. That is, for example, there will be some kind of golden, so to speak, middle ground. Let's assume, hypothetically, that your golden mean is somewhere in the middle where you get both great returns and a lot of sales. You feel at ease and you are satisfied with the advertising. Yes, I would like more high margin products or just in units, but for now, everything is going great. So as you manage your advertising, it slightly dips in profitability if you try to scale things up. Or, for example, it comes in somewhere here, but conditionally now it's the golden mean. Here is the golden mean. Based on this golden mean, the system can learn if you teach it, if you give it instructions, it can perform very well in any of these quadrants, depending on what you need. Additionally, your settings for planned profitability values greatly influence this golden mean, where you will continue to move forward. So you need to constantly play with profitability. You constantly need to play around with it. Why? Because essentially Google's task is to bring your plan, what you set in the settings. Let's say the fact that we will be receiving to fully match the plan. This is embedded in any of these AIs to ensure it works that way. You set profitability as a percentage, right? It will try to bring it to a certain value within that percentage. Plus, if you have noticed, if your performance has been running for more than a month, Google constantly asks you to lower this planned value because most of us set it too high. Well, I mean, the food system is also interested in making money by proportionally giving you a case, right? And she constantly tries to lower your bar. The plan is less and less and less so that the proportion and the fact also decrease. So this needs to be understood. This is another reason why you should always try to play around with this plan so that Google doesn't control you, but you try to control it. Delve into different structures, something like that, if that makes sense. Exaggerated. You see, described almost very simply, it might not be nice or pretty, but roughly speaking. So why is it that when you switch from maximum conversions to profitability, your sales drop significantly. So essentially, you were, for example, at this point, so right at this point, everything was great, everything was okay, and you switched to profitability for different reasons. Someone on YouTube, like me, for example, said profitability is cooler. Some specialist came along and did it. Or, for example, Google recommended you do it. And everything is going somewhere, just like that. Why is this happening? The problem lies only in the target number you set. The key point. Because previously, where smart shopping was concerned, the scheme for calculating marginal profitability was used. We had such a break-even ROAS. Because what it is, I am not from the break-even point. We calculated it based on the margin we are willing to spend. Now we will use this. Break-even ROAS only for evaluating the actual results. Whether performance is working fine right now or not, it's not meant to directly set our planned value, the conversion. Just so you understand, for example, here is this picture. Why did these changes happen? Because, firstly, Google is improving its targeting mechanisms, plus there are more advertising tools, plus a bunch of other things. There might be negative factors earning more from Google's side because it is still a corporation. Imagine Google is a large corporation. It's like a big farm where different situations can occur, if you know what I mean. So here, it's not us who control this monopolist. It's the monopolist who controls this consensus auction, and we just have to adapt. This is probably the main topic of this video, how to adapt to all of this, or why it doesn't work out to adapt. When you set profitability, you fall for only one reason. You are falling because you set a very high profitability. You probably set it too high on the break-even ROAS side. Or Google recommended a very high one and everything is just collapsing for you. So the conversions are not even moving here, but somewhere, in short, they are moving there. In other words, you are rolling back a lot. For some, the impressions have just dropped and so on. So to avoid all this, so you should not set the profitability as recommended first. Secondly, based on your NROAS shortfall, if you are currently satisfied with the results. You should not set the actual one you receive because this way you are putting your advertising account in a significant bind. So he will sit down, roll back to this point and just stay here. This is a negative situation. When you switch from maximum conversions, you need to correctly determine the profitability you will aim for. There are certain numbers, I won't mention them, as they need to be selected based on the niche of the project you're starting. You can come for a consultation and we can discuss all of this together. Because if I mention some number now, someone will misinterpret it, not listen to everything, skip parts, do something, and then leave me a negative comment. If you want, come specifically for your needs, and we will figure out how to function and work without any problems. So it needs to be, well, the only thing is that it needs to be smaller. That is, the plan should be significantly smaller, not equal, but significantly smaller than the actual results you received. For example, on maximum conversions, how should this be adjusted? Plus, you need to set an additional budget, and then directly, most likely, with a higher probability, your maximum conversions point will move. Towards the golden mean, will move towards our green point, and possibly even higher. Well, you need to understand that here you need to sell the check at a higher price. The price is higher because the units, the income, they can be relatively the same. Here, most likely, if the price is the same, you will be operating in this quadrant right here and not in this one. Here, the price is significantly higher. Well, you need to make an effort to agree. This is also not bad, but there are few sales here and the content is quite limited. And this entire chart applies, roughly speaking, to any volume of your sales. Whether you have, like me, many circles or just 10 units per month or even 5 units, it doesn't correlate at all. Everything adheres to this, roughly speaking, quadrant. Hitting the bullseye of your performance on profitability depends on how well it can understand whom to target. With what probability it needs to hit the orange of a mod. For example, a point that fully pays off for you. Or if it hits, for example, the red points, which may not be entirely profitable for you for various reasons. It seems like you've earned, but at the same time, your spend, for example, the spend can be significantly large. And it essentially follows this chart, but in terms of spend, it doesn't fit So Google might have messed up the target click or heavily spent your site's conversions poorly and so on. These are the nuances. This is the difference why when you switch from maximum conversions to profitability, everything drops. Because it should be the other way around. Profitability is much more flexible. It no longer follows a simple linear graph that goes through this. It moves along it. But it's a kind of wave. Its height, the width of this wave, which will pass through. This block, for example, is marked in gray. It depends on how stable your account is in generating these conversions, how well it understands the customer avatar, and how extensive the market reach is. That's right, if we try to trade. In Romania, where Google says there are only 12 million people, or for example, to Germany or even to the States, where there are 300 or however many million people, this is a completely different picture. The size of this wave varies. It can be smaller or larger, and the size of this wave directly depends on what kind of content you have filled your account with. Because any automation, whether it's maximum conversions or profitability, will be based on your account level analytics. Any new campaign, even in an old account where there are sales and everything is great, will initially refer to and analyze all the account analytics and conversions at the start. This is logical and correct. Why not use it instead of generating everything anew? For example, like a mask. You can launch this new campaign and it goes in a completely different direction. It doesn't work at all, or the targeting and the same ones are in one stream and it doesn't change. Here is AI. It can learn to expand this wave, reduce this wave, make it oscillate somehow, right? That is at an angle, at a slope, all of that. AI can do it. So for example, when Googlers offer you best practices, based on their best cases, like let's break £3,000, remove profitability, what will happen then? Or for example, on the contrary, for maximum conversions, before we launch, I don't know why they say this, but some Googlers say that you need to have 50 conversions in the account first, only then will maximum conversions work. Others say that only profitability will work with 50 conversions. It doesn't matter how many conversions you have, you can start with maximum conversions, but if you want to scale and advance, you will have to switch to profitability. You will be asked in the recommendations. Not all recommendations are useless. He just averages them out. Look, he will take a sample, I don't know, for example, let's take a sample of Rosetka. For power tools, for instance, let it be Prom, let it be some other store like ALO, and for example, 10 small shops that clearly don't have the budgets of Rosetka. And it will simply generate recommendations based on the average. That is, it won't exclude the maximum, for example, a large retailer, or the minimum, like a very small shop, and will produce the correct average. No, he will take everyone and lead them based on them. What works for an outlet doesn't always fit even for the same promo or for a smaller store. Therefore, not all recommendations made by Google are useless. They are all useful. You just need to understand whether they are suitable in this case or not. That's all. But I'm telling you, even Google will suggest switching because it is more comprehensive, more scalable, and more flexible. It can fit into these different squares, and you will be very satisfied with the spend as a result. You might not be satisfied at all. It ultimately depends on you personally and how you will manage this advertising tool. Leaving it in a static state, I don't know, it's not simple for everyone. You set it up once and then you don't touch it anymore and it works. There are very few things like that. Most likely, if you want to advance in the quadrant, you need to do something to increase. Even if you don't know, if you want to achieve a goal, you need to run towards it. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, lie down in that direction. The same principle applies here. Without and refining certain things in the account, it is impossible to achieve more directly. So whether to move here, for example, if you are still limited by something, or to move into this quadrant, it all depends on whether you want it or not, and whether you will take any actions in the account or not. Overall, this is how it looks. What happens when you shift from profitability to maximum conversions? It's roughly the same story. It gets very narrow, but what is the advantage of maximum conversions? If he can immediately work on analytics or based on the analysis of your feed when we start from scratch, conversions are not necessarily needed for this. He will find cheap conversions. He will find them at maximum conversions. It can find what it can from the budget, especially with starting budgets. Of $8, $12, it finds it very easily. But if it can't find, for example, or you get very little traffic, then your only option is profitability. The strategy is maximum value, either with a limit or without a limit. Most projects, large and major ones, operate on profitability. It provides a higher output, more impressions, more traffic, and consequently more leads. And the Googlers who create or give you recommendations, they are all backed by numbers, they are all real. But in most cases, for example, this is about insurance. For example, American or European, or they are targeted at a specific country. And most likely it will be a very large advertiser. Most likely he will be able to spend £3,000 or $3,000 in a week. For most small and medium-sized businesses in Ukraine, they can spend such an amount, but they would like a proportional result. This is especially true for small stores or those that are just starting out. You don't need to spend right away. It won't pay off. It's just giving money to Google without knowing if you'll gather the right analytics or not. You'll be moving around these quadrants aimlessly. You might not move through these quadrants conditionally. Maybe you'll end up in this block, which is pointless. $3,000 a week doesn't pay off in any way. All these impracticalities, all these recommendations, they are based on averages. In Ukraine, I haven't seen them being supported by Ukrainian cases yet, or there are very few of them, or they publish them very rarely. But for example, American or other markets need to understand that their spend is higher. They collect analytics faster, so their performance is more variable and they can rely on certain metrics. But this does not mean that you should fully apply the same model. Your task is to understand where you're heading and which quadrants you want to target, and at the right moment, switch to a certain strategy, or change this strategy, or remove profitability or set profitability. At some point, switch to maximum conversions for certain products or vice versa. Overall, I don't see anything critical in either strategy. If you want to scale, there is a margin of safety in the network. Because if you received unprofitable ads at maximum conversions, it will most likely be proportionally increased in profitability. Most likely you will grow in these areas, but your income will not increase. The same applies to profitability. For example, when you have gained momentum, you seem to have high profitability, but you want to increase these same things, for instance, here in quantity. You want to jump from this quadrant to this one, for example, or from this quadrant to here, or from this quadrant to here. It doesn't depend on this, but it's all possible if you try to adjust here based on the fact of what you have achieved. And these win ROAS breakpoints on profitability, how different they are from each other, how they differ overall. If the advertising there is already not paying off for you, then jumping into any of these quadrants using profitability will be very difficult. So you need to first bring the advertisement to this middle ground, whether you call it green, golden, or something else. And then from there, you can easily and quickly move to any quadrant you need. Moreover, these quadrants in principle can be applied to any price ranges, categories, product intersections, and more. This is all applicable to different situations in the account and can be scaled down or up according to the fractal principle, essentially the same principle. To jump from certain quadrants, you need to know how to properly edit an image or a situation. For example, hypothetically, if we made a small number of sales there, they are profitable for us. To increase both revenue and units here, you probably need to lower your targeting requirements for Google, because most likely our ROAS is very high. It is very high. It needs to be reduced by a certain percentage, and then it will be easier to jump over here. But if you overdo it with this reduction, you can very easily overshoot. For example, here, well, for instance, stay at the same quantity, but the revenue will drop sharply, or you can accept it here, but under no circumstances in this fourth or second quadrant, or whatever you want to call it, depending on how I count here. For example, if we want, for example, to jump from this quadrant to here, then most likely the problem is only in your budgeting. This will be very easy to solve. Profitability can remain untouched. But if we want to jump from this quadrant to over here, for example, it won't be quick because jumping diagonally is very difficult. You will either have to sacrifice a certain amount, meaning initially jumping here, for example, sacrificing revenue and then rolling up to the upper quadrant, so on units, or go another way by first increasing profitability on small units and then jumping here. I mean, I don't know, a bunch of gibberish was drawn. And if you look at it, it might not make any sense at all. I understand all of this perfectly. Maybe I'll gather my thoughts, reorganize it somehow into something more appealing, more beautiful. Some kind of chart, his calculations. If there are any interested, I can explain all of this. If they can draw very beautifully in Photoshop, we can easily create such a PDF together. But conditionally, it's very simple diagonally. You can easily dance into these 3 quadrants, this first one, for example, the second, the third, but it's very hard to dance into the 4th one. There is a situation where you can, but I take on larger accounts, and on average, it will be significantly less presentable than, for example, your single situation, right? This is roughly the difference in these strategies, how you can switch from one to the other, from one quadrant to another, to at least partially clarify the situation, so on how to work with performance. Maybe I have even complicated it for you. I don't know. Maybe I will create some kind of schedule, a presentable PDF, which I can sign. And it will be more understandable, but it will most likely not be available immediately with this video. That's all for now. If you found the video helpful, I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments.